The land of opportunities for some, but survival is an uphill battle for the majority of young people who find themselves in conflict with the law due to socio-economic disadvantages, family conflicts, and negative peer influences. South Africa has come a long way with its criminal justice system that evolved throughout colonialism, apartheid, and democracy. In 1997, the country had high juvenile prison numbers with over 21,000 sentenced and unsentenced young males locked up across the country's prisons. 30 years later, reports say the number for youths under 35 years have tripled.
I think for me, it was the situation of growing up without a father. He was present but not available, so he felt like, working and paying less attention to me was more important than anything else. And I think for me at that moment, like many of these young people, they lack the role of a father or a present father in their lives. And for me, I was kind of like in that position where I felt like I needed him and he wasn't available for me. And then I remember at the age of 12 being recruited by the gangs and kind of like feeling that sense of belonging, that sense of wanting to be part of something.
From Cape Town's notorious gangs, the Eastern Cape and Free States, Johannesburg and other parts of the country, persistent gun violence holds communities under siege. Young people between 12 and 22 years are particularly at risk, both as offenders and victims. Last year, between January and July, 39 children were caught in the crossfire in the Western Cape alone.
It was at the age of 14 that I got initiated. At 16, I was officially part of the gangs where I was given my first firearm, and I felt like a sense of belonging. I felt like I had achieved, and I felt like these men respected me. When I got involved in the gangs, it was having to do various things, having to break in, having to steal, having to rob, having to do everything that I was taught not to do. And it was kind of weird because the more I was doing these things, the more popular I became, the more liked I became in my community, the more not alone I was anymore. And I remember when we got arrested and I was put into solitary confinement in this police cell. The guys that I was arrested with, they said to me, listen, because you are young, just say to the police that you don't know us and we will take care of you. I was naive, I believed them, and I did that. Went to court, told the judge that I have no idea who these men are, and I'm the only one involved in this crime. To cut a long story short, I was on trial for 7 months. I was given 23 years. And so imagine now at the age of 17, being given 23 years, I felt like my life was over.
Many of these young people are incarcerated for serious offenses, complicating their transition to adulthood and their ability to become responsible citizens and get successfully reintegrated into the world.
I remember when I was sitting there and I looked at my life and I remembered that I've just now been in prison for close to 10 years. And I asked myself, what is it that I want to achieve moving forward? It was at that moment that I realized that I had lost my youth. I'd lost who I was in the process. And I remember these men sitting in front of me and making jokes about robbing people, killing people, raping and all of that stuff. And a question came to me and I said to myself that if I were to be a father one day, what kind of father am I going to be? At that moment, you must remember that I have already climbed the ladder of authority while I was in prison. At the age of 21, I started stabbing my way up the ranks so that I could get my ranks and become part of the gang that I chose when I came to prison. So having been in that process and leading all of these men and them looking up to me, I was losing myself. So it kind of dawned on me that this world that I was getting myself into required that I lose myself to become what they wanted me to become. Hence, those questions became so pertinent for me. If I were to be a father one day, what kind of father am I going to be? Especially to a girl child. How am I going to protect her against men like this, against men like myself? And it was at that moment that I realized that I needed to get out of the gangs. It wasn't easy getting out. It was a whole lot of procedures that I needed to follow, which was within the gang itself. But there was this one person that I will remember like it was yesterday. He became my saving grace because when he stepped up to me, he said that he saw potential in me, and he started organizing a bursary. And he said that if you leave the gangs, you can go and study. And that time it was UNISA, so I could do correspondence studies. So I started teaching. And as I was studying while I was in prison, after leaving the numbers, I was in solitary confinement in a single cell. And I started studying and I got my qualification. And I remember graduating. So I came back from that graduation feeling that I've received a piece of paper. And this piece of paper was my license back into the world. It was at that moment that I asked the head of center if it's possible for me to start teaching. And I used the qualification to teach other offenders while in prison. And that is how I was given parole because of good behavior. So from the 23 years that I was given, I was then 14 years in prison. And after that, I got out of prison. Education became my saving grace. It was education that allowed me an opportunity to say that no matter how deep I was in the gangs, no matter where I was, I could always choose education, and education would open so many doors for me moving forward. I got my first job, I worked at a school, I started rebuilding my life, I started the foundation, you know, and I realized that while I was out there doing my thing and working and becoming a responsible citizen, that many other young people were falling victim to crime. Many other young people were doing the same thing that Welcome was doing. Many young people out there did not know who they were. And so I started Bright Spark Foundation SA as an organization that gives young people an opportunity to identify their potential, to identify their talents, and to become whatever they want to become.
Welcome's story is one of success and hope. Tragically, for others, getting out remains a struggle as they quickly find themselves back to where they began. Slondiwe Mthalane for Democracy 30, SABC News.